Right when we first started, thank you. Right when we first started, the diocese asked for a humongous data call to help us amass all of the information that they needed. John and Karen, thank you so much for rooting through your records to provide me with some much needed information. And Dan Hordeski, thank you so much for fielding a late night phone call at the last minute to gather some extra tidbits of information that I needed. So anyway, we'll get questions started.
I was wondering what they mean by restructuring the Mass schedules. Does that mean we might lose a Mass?
Mostly for the parishes that are being combined to form one larger canonical parish, like say, who was it? Chillicothe and Lakin and those, because they're not going to have one priest for each parish that's staying alive. They're going to have to rework their schedule a little bit. So instead of one parish having both a 9 and 11:30 Mass, say, they might just have a 10 in order to accommodate a Mass at one of the other parishes if they decide to do that. They said that for everybody, if you noticed in the video. And it was on the off chance, I think, that if a parish that traditionally had more than one priest, like say Holy Family used to have the Franciscans and a priest, they're going to have to probably reduce their numbers because most of those parishes are going down to one, especially if it's a single structure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great question. I think the other thing is, when we talk about vibrant liturgies, we don't have any plans in the immediate future to change our Mass schedule because we're doing pretty well. But if we got to the point where we were saying, like, we're seeing regularly less than 50 people at a particular Mass, you know, there's something to be said for having fewer Masses, better attended. That is, unless it's your Mass that's going to be ending. But, you know, we had an experience at my last assignment where I was at St. Ambrose in Milan and St. Patrick's in Andalusia, and I was kind of quickly named pastor of both places, and the assistant pastor was taken away. We had 3 Masses at each parish at the same time, so it just was literally impossible. So I was told by the Vicar General, you have 2 months to make this work. So St. Pat's ended up going from 3 down to 1 because they were the smaller congregation and they had the bigger parish. And at first, the people were very upset about that, but we had one Sunday liturgy that was packed every week. And it really made a big difference in the morale, you know, attending the Mass, robust responses, you know, singing that was very loud and spirited. So I think that's kind of where they're getting at, where they're talking about vibrant liturgies. So we're not there yet, but I think that's the other thing that they're considering is sometimes it's better to have fewer liturgies that are more vibrant than just to have, you know, more liturgies that are very poorly attended.
Two questions. Newman Club, that's where I joined the church at Bradley, and I don't see a priest. Is there going to be a deacon assigned to that? Or that seemed like the group, the Millennium group, that younger group that really needs guidance and somebody to talk to.
I would agree, that's true. I'm assuming that will get addressed when the schools all get dealt with, because as of right now, the school, I don't know what you want to call it, the schools themselves are still going to possibly be restructured. That's a separate process, and I would assume that the Newman Center will get brought up during that.
Okay. And the other one I didn't hear mentioned that's kind of local is Farmington's.
They are in a different planning area. So the planning area stretches from the north to south, east to west, the entire Peoria diocese, but they're broken up roughly by county, and so sometimes a couple of counties are grouped together. Peoria is so big they have their own, but like Fulton, Knox, and I think there's one more in that group, are their own planning area. Pekin has its own planning area, and that included Woodford County, Tazewell County, and the other one that's over there, I don't remember.
Mason County, where I'm
you.
from.
Thank you.
We do exist down there.
Yeah, and so those all had their own presentations, their own set of workbooks, and their own set of meetings, and we weren't privy to that information. So, are they available on the website? Okay, I haven't gotten that far yet. So, Tim? It's for the live feed.
I know we're not planning on changing our mass structure right now, but with the other grouping areas, some of them closing, I'm assuming we're not naive. We're going to probably see an influx of new parishioners probably coming our way. Will we be addressing a change or any need to change later?
I would assume that we would probably wait to see how the masses start populating themselves once it's not going to happen for at least another year, I'd assume, once all of this starts getting implemented, because he's not going to announce his final decisions until Pentecost of '24. And so it's probably going to be at least a year before we see any of that population increase in other parishes. And so at that point, I would assume that because they take mass attendance every October. And so when we start doing those again, maybe next October, then at that point, we could kind of double check things and see how it goes. It would be a very nice problem to have extra people. Dan?
Explain to me what the function of a secondary site is. What, outside a nice nomenclature, what's going to happen at a secondary site?
So the way that they initially explained it is the primary sites are where all the records are going to be held, where all the priests are going to stay. That's going to be ground zero for that canonical structure. The secondary sites, so like, for example, if we had been combined with Holy Family, we would be a secondary site. There is a possibility that they would hold one Mass a weekend here still for the people in this area, but in large part, we have a lot of structures, a lot of grounds that would be very useful to the whole canonical parish, the combined canonical parish, and those sites would serve the same function. So if it keeps sites local, especially if they're involved with the community, for different things, like we have the garage sale, a lot of people know that we have that here, and there would be no reason to try and move all that to Holy Family had we been combined. And so a lot of the same functions still operate, but the whole point of the combination and creating a bigger canonical parish at that point is basically reducing costs for staffing and things like that. Does that answer your question? Okay, I'm trying.
To continue on that, it seems like our committee here has made a very impassioned defense of our parish at some point to get us off the bubble and on the model as no change to canonical structure. So kudos for that, but the models were all saying no decisions have been made. So what happens if some other parish makes an even better impassioned argument and we wind up on the bubble again? I mean, when I'm looking at either St. Mark's or or Holy Family, they both were parishes that I thought were a lot bigger than us because they have their own schools. They have things like perpetual adoration chapels, or they at least used to at Holy Family. I was just concerned that St. Anthony's would completely lose its identity and completely be run by another parish if we were combined into that. I mean, do you know what's happening with these parishes that do get combined and what the odds are, if you were to read the tea leaves, of things going south for us?
So to answer the first part of that, this is why they are encouraging everyone to fill out their feedback forms. And this comes from all of us, and they will put all of those together. And so far, in our experience, they've listened to comments that we've put forward. And so even though it looks promising for us that we're going to kind of get what we want, I still encourage everybody to fill those feedback forms out, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But there's paper copies you can mail in, and then you can do it online too. It's pretty easy to fill out. I've already looked at them. So any comments that you have or any encouragement that you have for them to keep the model for us the way that it is, I highly suggest you do that. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. It wasn't brought up in any of the stuff that we saw on the screen, but did the ADA contributions that are made at all the different parishes, has that been a consideration in any of this process? I mean, the fact that some don't even meet their structure?
I'm sure it is. So when we did the survey at the very beginning a year ago, all the financial information was, Jared, he's gonna have one. All the financial information was asked for, and and the ADA, I'm sure, was a huge consideration of that because they already have those records, right? And that was one of the things that we actually put down in our survey as part of a yay rah for us was, hey, we meet, yeah. We've got a really good record of meeting our requirements and stuff like that. You have a question?
Mine kind of touch on something that already has been discussed here, but the main thing I wanted to bring up is one of the statistics that didn't show up on the map there, I noticed, was, let's say Parish X closes and there's 200 people there. Devoted, married there, baptized their kids there, sent their kids to school there, if you will. How many out of that example of 200 show up at the parish they're reassigned to, and how many of them that might have already been on the edge just disappear? We're talking about evangelization and trying to get people into the church, and he brought up a very good point behind me about we can't kick a leg out from under the stool of the Newman Centers, because that's the age group that we're losing the most of. And I've got dogs in that fight with having 3 kids that age. I don't want to see that happen. And then what is the diocese doing to actively bring back some of these families that are just missing since COVID? We've got a couple of big families here. So I'm kind of just throwing that all in there because it seems like a lot of what's going on is damage control, so we're playing defense. I want to know if there's any forward-looking committees or anything looking down the road at an offensive game for wave number 2, because this is going to be an ongoing thing by those statistics.
Okay.
And I'll rest that.
Okay, go ahead.
That's a great question, Kevin. I asked a similar question. A couple weeks ago, Bishop Lou was good enough to have a lunch with the local priests. It was very informal. It was just him and the local priests. And we had a very nice lunch and then just Q&A. And I asked him a similar question to that about, well, my question more specifically was, if we're going to be doing evangelization and discipleship, these are things that people need training in, so that we're not just doing damage control, like leading a small group or running an alpha or, these different things that are happening. This takes a certain amount of training, all these different, parish renewal things that are happening around the country. And if you're not a wealthy parish that, has the resources to, say, get an outside group come in and train people, wouldn't that be something that would be great for the diocese to do? And Bishop Lou said, absolutely. He said we're playing the long game here, is the phrase that he used. And he said, this is just phase 1. This is just so that we're freeing up some energy and resources to be able to focus on the mission rather than just keeping buildings open. So if we right size, to the point that we have adequate staff, for the amount of infrastructure that we have, then we can start really focusing on playing offense. I like that terminology that you use. getting back to the Newman Center question, I don't think that the goal is to stop doing Newman Center work. I just think that it's not going to be the St. Mark's pastor. If you know Monsignor Brownsy, he's a very uniquely gifted guy, and he's just, most priests don't have the skill set to be able to lead a parish with a school and effectively lead a Newman Center. And so like these models are based not just on the guys who are currently there, but like on a sustainable future, so that if, let's say, Monsignor Brownsy had to get reassigned, it wouldn't be fair to just, put just, your average priest in there and say, hey, lead the parish with the school and run the Newman Center and do it effectively. So I think the plan is to have a dedicated Newman Center chaplain. So I do think that the goal is to make disciples, but to kind of solve some of the infrastructure problems that we have with just too much infrastructure, too few people running it. But your original question about the people who get alienated, get hurt, I think that's it's a very good question. It's a very serious question. I think it's probably going to be a lot of very pointed and targeted pastoral ministry on the part of the pastors of these closing places to work with their people and say, hey, listen, I know that you have invested your heart and soul in this place. This place is very meaningful and special to you, as well it should be. But the church is bigger than that, And don't let your heartbreak over this keep you from your access to the sacraments and the Word of God and the life of grace that God has given you through the wider church. But it's definitely going to have to be a work of accompaniment on the part of the wider church, particularly the pastors, to help those people grieve and to kind of help them to realize that even though their site, where so many of their spiritual memories and identity are tied up in, even though that's closing, they're not being denied access, to the sacraments. They're being invited into a new reality, which, though painful, can still be one that nourishes their spiritual life. I wouldn't want to have to be in that position. I think it'd be a very, very hard position. Well, and you're in parish council, so that'd be something to mention. I know you're not shy about mentioning things at parish council, so thanks.
St. Anthony's began as a mission church from the parish of St. John's. Then St. John's merged with St. Anne's. So many of us have been through those closures before in our age group. I was interested in which week in October they do the census. Hopefully, it's not the week we don't have religious education. Because there's a significant difference in our counts when we don't have religious education. Okay. So Karen, one of those is closed? Okay. We're allowed to count the Crucio people then, Sunday night? Okay.
Just two quick comments about St. Anthony's. It doesn't get counted and it doesn't get mentioned, but when we're now the home to Crucio and the Knights of Columbus.
Correct.
And I'm seeing new people coming in. That's evangelization. But I don't think it's necessarily going to be reflected in our daily attendance figures. Yet that is, we are evangelizing, and I mean, we can hope to get people from both groups. But that is a pro for St. Anthony's.
I made sure that they were aware of both of them.
Okay, thank you. Oh, the Bible
And they know about that as well. Good.
My question was on the parishes they were planning to close. It says to close that site. Now, obviously, they were not planning on holding masses there. Or is the diocese planning on actually selling the properties to gain finance? Or is it just mainly a site that's not used for religious services?
That I know of, they have not shared that information yet. That's true.
But the problem with that is that you still have expenses if your infrastructure
Yeah. So a large part of the data call that we had to do was how old is your church? When was it last renovated? Because it comes into is the building still safe situation? Because there's lots of churches around that don't have the money to do the upkeep that they're needed in order to keep the building not just open, but safe. You know, there's foundation issues, there's wall issues and stuff like that. And those kinds of things came into large effect when they decided which sites were going to close. It's not just attendance, it's how safe is the building to keep actually having worship services there for the people that are inside. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just wanted to say about that, about what's going to happen with the closures or whatever, is that that's actually part of implementation, and they haven't actually decided that yet. So there is no answer to that. The implementation's going to take 2 or 3 years, they said, and it's going to be individual to each situation. And I know some of the churches that are recommended not in use, they already know it. I know one of the churches that's connected with the church in Monmouth, they've known that for a long time, that one wasn't gonna stay open. I know St. Bernard's has been on the cusp for a long time. So, I mean, there's just different situations, and they haven't decided that yet, but that's a implementation thing. And feedback they're still taking feedback on that, so. And I think Steve said, I think St. Anthony's is gonna be fine as far as, I think that we have all the strength, all of our strengths that we have is why they have decided that at this point. I don't see it changing anytime soon. So, and also, yeah, I agree with Father about the Newman Center. I think they said at our last meeting that it had already been decided that the Newman Center was going to have its own priest. So, or not decided, but that was already part of it. So they didn't mention it. That's part of, I think, the prisons and the hospitals and and those kinds of things that they're talking about. But I can tell you the Bradley Newman Center is not going anywhere without a fight for me, so.
Here, I gotcha.
I get the primary, not the secondary. So, as we went through a lot of information, it kind of hit me all of a sudden the perspective of, one, what if I was the priest that handled St. Mary's of Kickapoo and also St. Patrick's in Elmwood? That's a haul. And how, if St. Mary's of Kickapoo is the primary site, how all of a sudden Elmwood is on an island out there at St. Patrick's. So the reason I say that is I think we need to reflect that we're in a fortunate moment. We are quite possibly the only parish in this area that was discussed tonight that has shown growth. And that's significant. That speaks for the people of this parish. You know, those that came all the way from St. John's originally, and my wife's family, 4 years ago, a little over, we moved up to St. Jude's Parish. We're in the parish of St. Jude. I'm 3/4 of a mile from St. Jude. We come here. This is home. So that being said, tonight is a little bit of an exhale, and it's proposed. Everything can change when it's proposed. However, we do need to position on the offensive. And if you have it, you know, go home, pray. If you have it in your heart that I need to be more active, let somebody know. As well as we have these mergers and all of a sudden changes of church names and so forth, and we could have shifts, we always want to be a welcoming group here individually. Smile at others. If you don't know somebody, ask them their name. I don't know a lot of people's first names, last names, but I know their faces, and I love you all. But make sure everyone feels welcome. We cannot afford to lose anyone. If someone leaves a parish and comes here, I don't like to see other parishes lose. We need to grow organically. There's a lot of people that need St. Anthony's.
I would also add that not only I should also add that not only do we want to be a welcoming parish for self-preservation, I think Jesus would like us to do that.
I wanted to mention that this thing that I attended on Saturday at Sacré-Cœur, which, by the way, is a beautiful building if you ever get out there. It's awesome, stunning, the environment. Anyway, there was a lot of deacons, a lot of lay people, key members of the parishes, and they put us in small groups, and in my group was the two deacons, well, a deacon from St. Mark's and a deacon from Holy Family, and then a deacon from up north, and another two ladies from a parish that got the bad news. And the hurt in their eyes said volumes to everybody else about what they were going through, the grief process, you know. And they explained to the group that although that their church was small, they had just received an inheritance from one of their members who had passed away, and were looking forward to spending that, you know, to rebuild their church or grow their church in other ways. And now they get this news. So, you know, that hurt was just doubled by, is that money all going to go into where we're going? You know, so, you know, it just kind of opened my eyes to say, oh my gosh, we're so fortunate because we're not going through something like that. And just to be aware that others who are going are really hurting, and, you know, your heart goes out to them. I guess that's all I can say. But one of the first things that the first individual I met was a deacon from St. Mark's. And when I told him I was from St. Anthony's, he said, oh, we thought for sure we were going to get combined with you. And I'm like, oh, you did? But I guess, you know, everybody had their own expectations going into this. And so it is what it is. We'll try to move forward.
And I think that maybe Les had answered part of the question I was going to ask before. I was looking through some of the online information, and it struck me that while most of the parishes were shrinking by 20, 30, 40, 50, in one case over 80%, ours was showing up as up 8%. And I was going to ask, is that a misprint or is it correct? Are we really growing?
No,
Because when you attend the 9 o'clock Mass, it doesn't look like we're growing. You still see a lot of empty seats. Maybe it's growing at the other Masses. I don't know.
11:30 has shown some growth in the last several months. And so,
And I was
so
wondering
maybe it's just not.
if you knew.
Yeah, well, yeah, you guys see it all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great. I was wondering if you knew what we're doing right that nobody else is doing, that we're growing. Is it the stuff like KC and Curcio? Is it some sort of outreach to young people?
I think it's just a big combination of things. I mean, we've been involving ourselves with Curcio and some of these other programs, and I think that speaks volumes to our campus with them and KC. But also, I think that speaks very highly of our parishioners in general. People feel welcome here and they're willing to stay. So it's, I think it's just a combination of quite a few things, and kudos to everybody and keep it up, because we could take everybody we can get.
I've worked all over the Diocese of Peoria as a musician for the last 55 years. And I can tell you that I know where a lot of the people are coming from that are coming to our parish right now. We're getting a lot from St. Thomas. We're getting them from Pekin. We're getting them from St. Anne's. We're getting a couple from St. Mark's. We're getting them from all over. It isn't just, somebody said earlier that, not tonight, but that it was just because of St. Anne's that we're growing, because several people came over from there. It's not. They're coming from all over. It's not. For whatever reason, and I have to say, and I'm going to say it, even though he's my boss, he has a huge effect on people. Not you. You're not my boss. Oh, Lord, save us. That one over there. Oh, my God. Okay, that's it. No, I would have to say that Father Clement has made a wonderful impact on this parish.
Very much so. Agreed. I've heard wonderful things about Father Charles, and we are very blessed to have him here. So thank you for sticking around. Real quick, anybody else? How are we doing on questions?
My family was actually based around the Spring Valley, Granville area. And Spring Valley, and they've closed them now. At one time, Spring Valley, a town of 2,000 people, I don't know how many Catholics, had 4 national churches. They had an Irish church, Lithuanian, Italian, and Polish. Are there any of those left? I mean, Spring Valley is down to 1 church now, which unfortunately is real close to the Granville church, they're probably 5 miles apart. So probably one of those is going to become a secondary site. But are there any national churches left?
I personally have no idea.
I have to say this. I've heard so many compliments about Father Charles, and other parishioners from other churches envy what we have here at St. Anthony's. It is just amazing. I'm in a network of over 100 people in a prayer chain that I started 15 years ago here, and I get a lot of feedback from a lot of people with the prayers and the Thanksgiving prayer is so important. All we do is ask and ask and ask God for all these things, but don't forget to thank Him for this parish and the growth that we've had, and for Father Charles.
Okay, so with that, we'll give a last-minute plug. Everybody, please fill out the parish surveys and let them know that we're very happy with our current model situation. So they will post a link to them on the Facebook page. We can do that. We'll put it up there, and then
We can even post it, we'll post a link to it on our homepage of our website.
I can probably send a file or send you a link of some kind that we can do it that way.
Yeah, you can push it through there, we don't get,
Yeah.
miss it otherwise.
Yeah. Oh.
I believe there was a password until they released the parish models, and then that got removed. I heard a lot of people mention passwords, and then at 7 o'clock or whatever on Sunday night, that got removed. So.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out here tonight. I would like to encourage all of you to tell everyone about this meeting on behalf of those that weren't here. A lot of people will ask you. Make sure they know. cdop.org, just right there on the diocese homepage. They've got all the Growing Disciples stuff. They can, all the information that we saw, plus the surveys, and Sue's going to put that out on the Facebook. And just encourage people to, as Sue said, make their voices heard. And hopefully we will continue down this good path we're on. Dan? Good. I don't like Facebook, but I know a lot of people are on there. We'll put out paper copies at Mass, and we'll put a link on the homepage of our website. I think they want them in October. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's just say October, just to make sure, don't procrastinate, get it done. Tim? Are you trying to give more work to your wife?
Yes, he is.
The last thing I just want to say is this is just a wonderful parish, and you guys should really be pleased with this vote of confidence the diocese has given to us. Ultimately, we're here because, the Lord has planted us here. This parish is the fruit of something that God is doing, and that God has been doing for 50 plus years and is continuing to do. And the parish is made up, I remember Dan and some others were sharing with me, for years this place worshiped over in the parish center. And Dan was telling me that when they were making the plans for this place, they intentionally didn't call it a church. They called it a worship site because we have a church. The church is the people. And I think that that's a very profound truth, that the church, and maybe that gets back to your point, Kevin, about people who are grieving over the loss of buildings that hold tremendous meaning for them. Ultimately, it's the people. There's persecuted countries where, the churches have been torn down, the people are forced to worship underground. There's poor countries where people worship in little huts and shacks. But what really makes the church, the body of Christ, the extension of Jesus' incarnation in history is the people. And my parents, they've been here a couple of times, and my mom always tells me how lucky I am. She says, she's like, do you thank those nice people for being such a wonderful parish? She says, you could have ended up with a real lemon of a parish, but you got these really nice people. My mom's the one that said to me when I first started at St. Mark's, my first time as a pastor, she said, just remember they're more afraid of you than you are of them. But I think it's a great fit. It's a great fit for me. And at this time in my life, it's a joy to be among you and with you as your pastor. And let's just pray that God will bring to completion the good work he has begun in us. But let's take this vote of confidence as, yes, an exhaling moment, as Les said, but also as a mandate, a mandate to not rest on our laurels, but to continue to be the church that we want to see, be the change that we want to see in the church that can help us to go and make disciples for many generations to come. Special thanks to our team, Sue and Lynn and Les and Jared and Karen. Special thanks to Matt Bulfer, who helped me get everything figured out tonight. He's one of the main reasons why we had good audio and video. Thanks to all of you for all of your contributions tonight, for showing up, and just for what you do day in and day out. Raise your hand if you were a part of the garage sale. See, that says it. Let's give yourselves a hand, garage sale people. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Thanks, everyone. God bless. Safe travels.